January 3rd, 2026, 2 o'clock in the morning. For the people of Caracas, Venezuela, it felt like the world was ending. But to understand the fire that rained down that night, we have to look back to the months where the fuse was slowly burning. It began in the fall of 2025. The Trump administration had already declared the Tren de Aragua and other Latin American cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. By September, the Caribbean had become a graveyard. U.S. Navy ships were hunting. One by one, boats accused of carrying narcotics were vaporized by precision strikes. No trials, no arrests, just smoke on the water. Behind the scenes, the U.S. was building a force not seen in generations. F-35s in Puerto Rico, cruise missile-laden submarines prowling the depths. The official reason? An armed conflict with narco-terrorists. But the real target was the man inside the Miraflores Palace, Nicolás Maduro. Operation Absolute Resolve. The mission was codenamed Absolute Resolve. It wasn't just a raid, it was a 150-aircraft symphony of destruction. To get to Maduro, the U.S. first had to blind a nation. Long-range kamikaze drones, used for the first time in a major U.S. operation, buzzed over the mountains, striking radar hubs and communication towers. In 30 minutes, Venezuela's air defenses were suppressed. 93,000 ground troops were paralyzed, unable to respond as U.S. helicopters pierced the heart of the capital. The target was Fuerte Tiuna, a sprawling military installation outside Caracas. Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, thought they were safe in the heart of their military machine. They were wrong. The morning after. As dawn broke, smoke still rose from the La Carlota military base. The nation was in shock. Power was out in southern Caracas. Trump's message was blunt. Maduro was a fugitive captured by justice. He claimed inherent constitutional authority to act, calling it a judicial extraction mission. But in Caracas, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez called it what many others did, a kidnapping. The casualties were high. 23 Venezuelan security officers and 32 members of the Cuban military were dead. Despite the capture, the U.S. did not install a new government. They didn't even back the Democratic opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado. Instead, they worked with the remaining regime, allowing Rodriguez to be sworn in as acting president on the condition she release political prisoners and cooperate on oil. The Oil Gambit and the global fallout. Why would the U.S. leave the old regime in place? The answer lay beneath the soil. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves on Earth, but its production had collapsed to a fraction of its potential. Trump was clear, U.S. firms would go in, rebuild the infrastructure, and recoup allegedly stolen oil money. Within weeks, a 50 million barrel deal was signed, and $300 million in cash was already flowing. But the world was watching. China was deeply shocked, condemning the reckless use of force. Russia, a longtime ally of Maduro, saw its influence in the region evaporate overnight. At the United Nations, the Secretary General called it a dangerous precedent. For the first time, a sitting president had been snatched from his own home by a foreign military to face trial for crimes in their courts. As Maduro and Flores pleaded not guilty in Manhattan, the world realized the rules of the game had changed. The Don Road Doctrine was here. The Western Hemisphere was no longer just an area of influence, it was under the shadow of the gun.